If you're already thank you. We hope that we can get a conversation going after today's webinar about the Title I set aside and how you're using it in your days. A little bit about Schoolhouse Connection, if you aren't familiar. Again, thank you for joining us. We are a national nonprofit advocacy organization. Our mission is overcoming homelessness through early care and education, from prenatal to post-secondary. We go about this in a number of different ways. We offer a lot of practical assistance. K-12 LEAs and SEAs on implementing the provisions of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, as well as best strategies and ideas for meeting the needs of your students experiencing homelessness. We also work with early childhood providers and institutions of higher education. We do a number of advocacy at the federal and state levels. And we always say the jewel in our crown is our network of young scholars who have experienced homelessness and whom we are privileged to support through scholarship and case management assistance. We encourage you to check out our website, schoolhouseconnection.org. We have a number of resources. Chances are, if you have a question about something, we have probably answered it for someone else, and it's in our FAQs document. During today's session, we'll share an overview of the Title I Part A homeless set-aside, make sure you understand the basics, and then we'll get into our panel discussion with our SEA and LEA representatives here today, who we'll introduce in just a few minutes. And then we want to make sure we're leaving time for your questions and discussion. We know that when you filled out the registration link, a number of you indicated that you are coming into this with either a beginner or intermediate knowledge. So we're going to try and provide something for everyone today and answer as many questions as we can. So to start, we're actually going to ask you a question first, and I'm going to launch our first poll here. We would love to know, how are you currently using your Title I Part A homeless set-aside funds? And hopefully, yep, I see some folks logging in your answers. You can choose as many as apply to you. So I'm going to give it maybe 30 seconds here. There's a lot of options to scroll through. Make sure you scroll to the end. I see a number of you indicating you're not sure. So we're glad that you're here. We can give you some ideas and share some more information. A lot of folks indicating transportation. That's a huge need that we'll see. And I'm super excited for what you'll hear today. Some liaison salary uses, clothing, hygiene supplies, all big needs. I'm going to give us another couple seconds. I see folks frantically getting in their responses. This is fantastic. If you have a use that is not listed, please share in the chat. These are not every single allowable use on the screen here, so we encourage you to share any other ways that you're using your Title I Part A set-aside funds in the chat so that we can learn and so that our audience can learn as well. Okay, I'm sensing a lull in activity, so I'm going to end the poll here and see if this will show up for everyone. So hopefully you can see on your screen if it popped up, we have a range of uses, not a ton of surprises up here. We do see a lot of transportation, school supply, liaison salary uses of the set aside. A lot of you indicated clothing, hygiene supplies, shoes. Couple indicated eyeglasses. You can see tutoring, fees, a couple others. And about a quarter of you said you're not sure. And so we're really glad that you're here. Hopefully what you'll hear today are not only some ideas of how you can use these funds, but strategies for talking with your colleagues in your LEA about reserving your set aside and making sure it is allocated to meet the needs of your students experiencing homelessness. With that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Erin Rice, to introduce herself and walk us through the basics.
Hello, everyone. It is so wonderful to be with you today. My name is Erin Rice. I am Manager of Education Initiatives at Schoolhouse, and I'm going to start us out by talking about what is the Title I Part A set-aside. So for those of you that may not be familiar, I just want to start out giving you a little bit of context. So Title I from the Every Student Succeeds Act is a federal funding program that's really designed to close those achievement gaps that exist within students and make sure that students have the opportunity to obtain a high quality education. So Part A is the largest section of Title I funds, and Title I Part A funds give money to school districts and to LEAs according to a formula that's based on numbers and percentages of children from low-income families within that LEA. So it's a really specific formula, and you likely in your role will not be a part of determining any of that, but just so you know that it's all based on a very specific formula. And then when LEAs receive those Title I Part A funds, they distribute a majority of the funds to individual public schools. And they may use some at the LEA or district level, but all of that really for the purpose of benefiting our students who need that additional academic support. So it's really important to know that when we're thinking about McKinney-Vento, we're really thinking about and understanding that our McKinney-Vento students who attend any school in an LEA are automatically eligible for Title I Part A services. So some schools within an LEA receive Title I funds, don't, but any McKinney-Vento student, regardless of what school they attend within that LEA, is eligible for those services under Title I Part A. And so all LEAs that receive those Title I funds are required to set aside funds that are necessary to provide those supports to our students experiencing homelessness and to provide those services that are really comparable to what other students are receiving within their Title I Part A schools. So let's talk about whether or not our LEAs are required to even set aside a specific amount of these funds. When we're thinking about our students experiencing homelessness, it's important to know that yes, LEAs are required to use set aside funds. So any LEA that receives Title I Part A funds is required to set aside a portion of those funds specifically to serve students experiencing homelessness. So again, any student who is identified under McKinney-Vento as experiencing homelessness is categorically eligible for Title I Part A, regardless of which school they attend. So I mentioned that regardless of if a particular school is a Title I funded school, students who are experiencing homelessness are eligible for those services. What's really important to know is that Title I Part A set-aside funds are so important to really look at how we can dedicate resources for our students experiencing homelessness. Dedicating those resources to our students helps to improve identification, attendance, and success in schools, because 76% of LEAs who don't receive EHCY funds, and those are McKinney-Vento subgrant funds, have to rely on their Title I Part A funds to meet the needs of their students experiencing homelessness. So it's a really important funding source when we're talking about how to specifically serve and support our students experiencing homelessness. So I talked about the set-aside funds, so let's really look at how much of those funds are we required to reserve for our students experiencing homelessness. So LEAs are required to reserve, the language says, such sums as may be necessary to provide educationally related services to our students experiencing homelessness. And the best way to figure out what that looks like is to base that on a needs assessment. And so if you are the homeless liaison within your LEA, being a part of that conversation to look at the needs of your students experiencing homelessness is absolutely imperative to help determine and figure out what those needs really are. If you are not the liaison, if you are coming in as a business office or a federal programs director, it's really important that you're including the homeless liaison in those conversations to really look at and to know and understand what the needs of students are. So that looks really different in every LEA. Some LEAs set aside a really small amount of funds to support their students experiencing homelessness, while others reserve hundreds of thousands of dollars that help support identification and providing services for students. But again, if we're looking at that needs assessment and really basing that on what the needs of our students are, that will help to figure out what that amount really is or should be to support your students. And then, of course, it's really important that we're looking at the services of those set-aside funds every year to determine, are we reserving enough funds to meet the needs of our students? Should we be reserving more? Should we think about a different way to use our funds to best meet those needs? And so evaluating the services that were provided based on that needs assessment is a really important part of that process. When we look at how our Title I Part A funds can be used, it's really important that we're considering these two principles when we're thinking about funding. So first of all, we are providing services that are not ordinarily provided to other students, but we have to make sure that those services are reasonable and necessary to help our students experiencing homelessness to take advantage of the educational opportunities that they have. So we're always looking at, is this activity or is this service reasonable and necessary? And then also using these funds as a last resort when there are not other funds available to pay for that service or support. Those are kind of our principles of our governing principles of how we know if we should be using our funds to do a specific activity or to fund a specific thing with our Title I set aside funds. So that might look like helping with the cost of transportation to and from the school of origin, or helping to cover the cost of the salary of the homeless liaison. There are so many different things that we can use our funds for to tie back to that student's education. And so on the last slide here, you can see just a beginning list of all of the different allowable uses of these funds. But I want to really encourage you to think about what are the needs of your students, because tying an activity or a need back to your student's education, there's a lot of things that covers. And so thinking about activities like we talked about school supplies in the poll that you all filled out, thinking about meeting needs through food resources or medical resources like eyeglasses or hearing aids, providing mental health support for students or academic support for students. I won't read you everything on this list, but just know that there are many different ways to help meet the needs of our students experiencing homelessness using these set-aside funds from the Title I Part A allocation. So that's a very quick, very high-level overview of what Title I Part A homeless set-aside funds are. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Erin.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Karen. I see questions already coming in the Q&A box. Thank you so much to our participants for sharing those. Some of them already answered with her telepathy. She knew that you were going to have those questions, and so I've been marking those as done. Some of these will be answered through our panel discussion, so I want to save those. I want to encourage you, though, if you have additional questions, please don't stop sharing them in the Q&A. And I promise we will get to as many as we can. First, we're going to ask you another question, though. I did see a question or two around how to make determinations and who makes those determinations. And so in that vein, I would love to share another poll to get a sense of what you all need in order to utilize your Title I Part A set-aside funds. So it could be any number of things. It could be support with your data or doing a needs assessment. It could be more guidance from your SEA around what's allowable or how much to set aside. Could be more examples. I see a lot of folks clicking more examples and ideas from other LEAs. Maybe you need advice on partnering with your Title I colleagues, how to go about that conversation. Or again, maybe there's something else you need, and we encourage you to share that in the chat with us. And this helps us get a sense of how LEAs across the country are able to reserve their funds, what they need by way of resources that we might be able to provide or connections that we can make with other experts. So I'm going to give us just a few more seconds for you all to share what you most need. And then I have the privilege of introducing our fantastic panel today. So I'm going to end our poll here. Thank you all so much for participating. And you can see a lot of requests for examples. So I'm so glad that we have our presenters here today. A few of you indicated more help with needs assessments or data to help inform how you're using your funds. And a few folks indicated advice for partnering and more guidance from your SEA. So please keep your questions coming. And I am going to stop sharing my screen here after I put up our introductory slide. We have a fantastic panel of experts here today from coast to almost coast. We have two folks from Sunnyside Unified School District in Arizona, Henrico School District in Virginia, and the Virginia State Coordinator. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, though, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can give you our full attention. And I would love for to start with Andrea and Araceli in Sunnyside Unified in Arizona. Please introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about your school district, how many total students, how many identified, and we'd love to know if you currently receive an EHCY subgrant.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Foster. I'm the Director of Federal Programs here in Tucson, Arizona. I've been here in Sunnyside. I just had my 25th anniversary in March and started, as many of you, in federal programs as a homeless liaison, but our district did not have a homeless program. So I didn't know what that was. So I've been in your shoes before, but there's a wealth of information, even more so now than 25 years ago because of virtual opportunities such as this. So our district we have 20 schools, K-12, one preschool program school. We were 14,300 as of October 1. I just checked, we're a little bit lower, but being Arizona, we do have some immigration things like that. So that's a different virtual meeting. We are currently still going through and identifying our students, but I will allow Araceli to give you that information. We currently do not have a subgrant, but we were just off the heels of expending our ESSER funds. We had a lot of carryover funds with our Title I, and we were spending down our ESSER homeless funds. So we had a plethora of funds that we were trying to spend down within the time limit. So we did not have the capacity to have the extra subgrant. I think I answered all the questions with that. Okay. All right. So I'll turn it over to Araceli.
Hi, good morning or good afternoon, depending where you're at. My name's Araceli, and I am the homeless liaison for Sunnyside Unified School District. I've been with the school district about 16 years, so I've been in federal programs quite a bit of time, and so I'm very proud and honored to be a part of this team. We anticipate identifying approximately 300 students, with the majority being high school students. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Andrea and Araceli. We will come back to you. I want to make sure we are hearing introductions first from Lisa Ann in Henrico, and then Dr. Pop will turn to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Ann Abernathy. I'm the McKinney-Vento liaison in Henrico County Public Schools. We are located in the greater metro area of Richmond, Virginia. In Henrico, we have about 74 school sites. We serve students pre-K through 12. Our enrollment is just under 51,000 students in total. This year for McKinney-Vento, we have identified 1,172 students. We are still actively identifying students and serving students as needs arise. In the 23-24 school year, we ended with having 1,292 students eligible under McKinney-Vento. Henrico is very fortunate that we are a subgrant recipient, and so we do receive the EHCY funds. I've been with Henrico about, since 2010, and in that time I've worked in serving students both in exceptional education, helping parents navigate that process, but I've been serving with McKinney-Vento since 2017.
Thank you so much for joining us. And before I turn to Dr. Pop, I just want to point out I'm so glad we have both an LEA with an EHCY subgrant and an LEA without an EHCY subgrant. It's so important to make sure you're maximizing your funds regardless of your subgrant status. And so you're going to hear some wonderful ideas from both perspectives today. And I want to turn to Dr. Pop to introduce herself as our state coordinator representative today.
Thank you, Erin. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm Patricia Pop. I am the state coordinator for Virginia. We are one of 2 states where the program is outsourced and is administered through a university. William & Mary School of Education took over the program for Virginia Department of Education in 1995, which was the year I started in the doc program at William & Mary, and I was the little graduate assistant that went out as they were doing their external evaluation. So I'm in my 30th year working with the program, and I've been the official state coordinator since 2003. Virginia has about 1,075,000 students overall across the Commonwealth. And last year, our school divisions identified just under 21,000 students as experiencing homelessness.
Thank you so much. I've already seen a few questions come in about how the state can do this, what the state should do about that. So I'm glad you are here to field those questions, Dr. Pop, and we will try to get to all of those. First, though, I would love to go back to Andrea and Araceli to see if you can share a little bit more information about the needs of your students experiencing homelessness in Sunnyside. What are the big needs that you're seeing?
Well, I can speak on that. One of our we have many needs, but one of our biggest needs for our students experiencing homelessness is school transportation, especially out of district transportation. More and more of our students are living outside the district boundaries and farther from their school of origins. Despite this challenge, we're currently transporting approximately 100 students using our own school buses and school vans. It is a high volume, but we do not contract with outside transportation agencies. We tried that about a couple of years, well, more than 10 years ago, I think we tried that. And our numbers were a lot lower back then. It didn't work well for our students. Parents and students shared that their experience was often uncomfortable. Some students felt embarrassed and asked to be dropped off away from the school to avoid being seen. And so it wasn't working, it wasn't sustainable, and it was too costly for us in the long run. We identified the needs through our McKinney-Vento referral process. We tracked transportation requests in a shared spreadsheet with our transportation team. And we meet with them before the school year starts to plan and make adjustments. We also send surveys to our parents to get their feedback on their experience with school transportation and find out what other needs their students may have, which help us continue to improve on how we support our students.
And just to add a little bit more to that, so we do an end of year evaluation, but also Araceli and I have a standing biweekly meeting where we look at the data and what are some of she mentioned referrals that she's getting. She keeps them in a spreadsheet, but we also get emails, calls, various. And so they log all of that so that we see if there's trends that are coming. And so based on that, we pivot and as I'm doing grant revisions, make those changes on the fly. Or if it's something we can't pay for that's not allowable, then we reach out to who are community partners, what are some other funding sources that we could do. So I think data is really key, and just being in tune with what's happening. What are the trends that you're seeing, making sure that you're keeping up with your mandated trainings with all staff, being all the way from your bus drivers to your front office staff, to your teachers, to everybody, your school leaders as well, so that anybody in that building that hears of a need, a little light goes off about, oh, that's that MVP McKinney-Vento. So I think just trying to 7 times 7 different ways, but also just keeping track of what's out there that's trending, but definitely using the data to help drive the decisions.
A great point there on the data piece. Thank you so much for sharing. We're going to come back to Sunnyside. I want to go to Lisa Ann now. Lisa Ann, same question to you. What are the biggest needs of your students experiencing homelessness in Henrico?
So of course, like most everybody else, transportation to and from school of origin. Like we saw our numbers increase in identification 12% from the 22-23 to 23-24 school year. And we're anticipating we're going to see a smaller increase again this year, but the number of our students who are living so far outside of our boundaries really did skyrocket. And our Title I team just rose to the occasion and provided support of that. Just for some context, of the 1,100 something students we're serving right now, 55% of those students require transportation to and from their school of origin. So we actually do use a contract transportation service. We do several different ways. We have our pupil transportation team, we have our gas card support that we provide, and we have our contracted transportation. But right now we have 273 students who are utilizing contract transportation to get to and from school of origin. Without that Title I support, that absolutely would not be possible. Title I is also supporting 2 full-time team positions for McKinney-Vento. We are very fortunate in Henrico that the relationship with Title I has a long-standing, extremely rich tradition. The amount of support here in Henrico is just, it's beautiful. The commitment, the student first centeredness, the idea of supporting our students who are experiencing homelessness has just been everything. So we have a full-time position for a person who does intake and data management for our team. And then those 55% of our students who need to be transported, we have 1 position who handles setting up all of those arrangements, communicating with the schools, communicating with parents, troubleshooting whenever there's need, anything like that. We also find that what Title
Uh-oh, Lisa Ann, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just went on mute.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much. Our Title I funds make sure that our students can fully participate in their education. So we use that money to pay for student fees, for field trips, extracurricular needs. We've seen a lot of support this year that students needed for their technical and career certificate programs, where they had required trainings, required books, required uniforms, things like that. We've been able to utilize Title I money for that. But I will say that one of the greatest things we see with that Title I, it allows us to do so much more with other funds that we do have. So we can then dedicate our state funds to doing things, events for identification, enroll engagement. We can use those funds to do academic enrichments, things like that. So I can't say enough about the relationship that we have here and the difference that it's making for our students.
That's fantastic to hear. I do want to go back to Sunnyside and then again to Henrico to hear about any other ways that you're able to use your Title I set aside. Before I do, I want to acknowledge two things. One, thank you so much to our audience for filling our Q&A box in our chat with questions. I promise that we will come to a stopping point in a few minutes and get to as many of those as we can. And then the other piece I wanted to add is Dr. Pop, not to put you on the spot, but we've heard from Sunnyside and from Henrico specifically about the needs of their students experiencing homelessness. I'm curious, from your position as state coordinator, what are the other needs you're seeing across LEAs in Virginia that some of your LEs are using Title I for?
So additional support and staffing for their offices, either for the liaison or for a part-time school social worker, or additional staffing. And also the transportation, I'd say, are the two places I see the majority of funds being used to attend to.
Thank you for that. I want to go back to Sunnyside. Andrea, I saw you come off mute. Would love to hear any other ways, any other examples that you'd like to share of how Sunnyside is using your Title I Part A fund.
Yeah, so we have a good relationship with our counselors across all of our schools. And so one thing that Araceli noticed is she was getting a lot of email requesting assistance with student fees for exams, but Weekend Academy, which is one of our credit recovery programs here in Sunnyside. And so we actually went to the state, verified that it was allowable. And so we created a Google form that we shared for our advisors and also the counselors, and it just had some screening questions. And in Sunnyside, we're very unique in that we have 20 schools. They all run school-wide Title I programs. So we have a lot of flexibility with that in how we serve students. So we are using this Google form to not only capture our McKinney-Vento or potentially McKinney-Vento, but also our Title I eligible students that we could expand this assistance to. And so that in itself, I currently in my spreadsheet have 167 referrals or requests, and we've called them Title I scholarships. So we've paid for scholarships for these students to work on their credit recovery, but it's also helped us with identification of more McKinney-Vento students. And so it's not just a homeless program, but it's a credit recovery program for students needing it. And then in the background, we identify which category this is. So if it's do the SETASO or if it's do this PO. So that's been a big one. We also are doing summer school caps and gowns. This is a huge time for graduation. And so as I think Lisa Ann, you were saying, allowing Title I to cover these things over here allows our other partners in the district to maybe, like Youth on Their Own is a Tucson program. They cover other things. And so by, everybody's budget seems to be getting decreased. If we could divide and conquer and say, well, if I can handle these and maybe you can handle these, that has really helped us. And so Araceli mentioned our high school students were the largest identified. We've really focused on those, which is why we're seeing more of the requests be specific to the needs of high school students. But we do want to make sure that we're not forgetting our younger students. But we've just, it shows by also having, Araceli had an advisory committee of homeless youth, and from their input, we learned that we needed to have some laundry facilities for our unaccompanied youth that didn't have access as they were couch surfing. And so we actually developed one here in our opportunity center for them. So yeah, those are just a few examples of how we've grown our program.
That's fantastic. Before I turn to Lisa Ann Araceli, I wanted to make sure we're getting all of your ideas in and see if you had anything else to add.
Just also wanted to piggyback that with that advisory group, we found out that some of our kids needed quick access to resources. So we use our funding to buy those toiletries and funding and house them at each high school. So the kids can get it right away through their school counselor. They don't have to come to a different facility to pick that up. So that was one of the things that we used our funding for as well, to make sure we met those needs in a quicker, faster way.
That's a great idea. Thank you so much for sharing that. Lisa Ann, back to you. I want to make sure we're getting all of the good examples and ideas from your brain. So what else can you tell us about how Henrico has made use of the Title I set aside?
So I'll kind of piggyback on what Andrew was saying, that it really, for this year, right, it's transportation, it's the student fees to help them participate, things like that. But the other doors that has opened for us to be able to support our students has been massive, because when you can sit in front of community partners, you can sit in front of faith-based partners, you can sit in front of individuals and tell them how many different places from which you are receiving support, that kind of, it gives credibility to the work that you're doing. It creates excitement around the work that you're building because they want to be a part of that, because so many other people are a part of that. So while Title I is taking care of the basic transportation, school fees, handling those positions for us, 2 full-time positions, so that our students can be served, then we're able to do other things. We have a clothing closet that we have for students, that we do brand new clothes and shoes. Like, so our students have like the latest things, the latest trends, things that will make them proud of themselves, things that will help them recognize their own beauty, their own gifts, their own worth, where they can stand in front of their peers and just feel like they own the school when they walk in the door, right? We can do things like that. We are able to then have another position on staff that is focused solely on supporting attendance. We have a McKinney-Vento social worker on staff that sits down and talks to our families and talks to our students and meets with our school teams and advocates and plans and helps kind of set up the home environment, all of the things to support attendance. That wouldn't be possible if we didn't have that Title I support, because we could say, look at all we're doing and look at what more we could do if we had a new position. So having that community of funding is massive to be able to grow a program and support. And the other thing that we have found is the commitment from our Title I team. And I am fortunate in Henrico, I am under federal programs. I sit under that director, so I serve on the same team and work in the same building and meet all the time with the Title I director. So that relationship is massive. And if you don't have that opportunity, if you're not in the same team with them in the same division, introduce yourself, right? And tell the story of your students. Like, you don't have to use their names, you don't have to use their addresses, you just have to set up those scenarios and the situations and explain the barriers to education that your students are facing. Like, give them the stories, pull on their heartstrings, and kind of invite yourself to their table so that they can understand the need for their support and the level of importance that brings. And then the other piece that I would just hear you, and Andrea, data, like collect it, refer to it, report on it, tell everyone about it. And it's not just about, oh, we provided this many things, or we paid this number of fees, or we have this number of cars running. It's, we're doing all of that. This is what we've provided, but this is the difference it's making. Like, we go out there and say, no, we have decreased chronic absenteeism from 49% down to 35% since we started our focus on this. We have seen our students who are in the 12th grade graduate at a rate above 90%. 2024, our students graduated. Of our 12th graders identified, 93% of them graduated in 2024. So data. And don't be shy about it, right? Because then you start to find out that even support comes from other places. Like, Henrico County wants to be a good steward of all of their federal funds, right? Everything that comes in, we want to make sure we're really using it to the best of our ability and in the most efficient way possible. And so that relationship with Title I, the other relationships that we brought in with both private funding and grant funding, federal funding, our state subgrant, Henrico says, yes, we want to be at this table too. And so here's how we can build some things in to provide even more support to make sure that our federal dollars go as far as they possibly can.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And Andrea, I saw you come off mute. I want to make sure I'm giving you space to say any additional thoughts.
I just wanted to say that student testimonials are the best thing that really is what's moving. And at Aceli, we do an annual Angel Tree event for our unaccompanied homeless youth. And we have often invited back previous graduates that were part of our homeless program to speak to our current students that are experiencing the same thing. And oftentimes they're, going to the U of A or Pima. And we even have an administrator that used to be homeless, and he's an assistant principal. So those personal testimonies, those are the most moving thing. And so showing the importance of what we do, not only to the students that are sitting in those seats, but also your fellow colleagues is one of the most important things. So just wanted to highlight that too. Good job.
Such great, rich points all around. Dr. Pop, I would love to turn to you now. From a state perspective, first, I would love for you to share with us from your perspective, what has been the difference that you've seen across LEAs when they make use of their Title I side?
All right. So, having been around for a while, there was a very long time when folks would say, oh, everybody gets everything they need. We don't need to use Title I funds to help support these students. I mean, that would commonly be a story. From that kind of perspective, all the way through many years ago, Henrico's story, which was their director of Title I at the time, had her little drawer that pulled out on the old desk where you could have an extra piece of to write on, that, or you tape little notes to. Well, the note that she had taped on that was the number of students who were experiencing homelessness in Henrico. And every day she'd pull that out, she'd check with the liaison every now and then, and she would think about, what else can I do for these children? So that kind of commitment does go back for a very long time. And you can see from what Lisa Ann is able to do, there's been that impact there. The way we've tried to build on this is we ask this question whenever we monitor any of our school divisions, and bringing that up as part of the conversation. Pushback at the beginning was, well, we just give everyone what they need. But one of the things we developed is we went into everybody's Title I fund applications, and we made a table, which we've shared with folks, and it's on our website. I'll put the link in the chat in a moment. But it just shows, if you identified this many students, here's the range of how much money was set aside by school divisions across Virginia. And if you've got somebody who's identified over 100 students and they've only put $1,000 in, you can see that doesn't sit very well when some folks are putting closer. The average is over almost $50,000. So it's a place for some extra conversation and maybe a little bit of guilting folks into thinking about what else they might be able to do there. So that comparison chart has been a good leverage point for us. And we include that with all the online resources, the ones that were in the PowerPoint Karen shared with that U.S. Department of Ed guidance. Look at this laundry list of all the things that you can do. So always bring that into the conversation. And also in terms of our subgrants, when we do a McKinney-Vento subgrant, part of scoring it is based on how much funding is coming out of Title I. So if you want to use McKinney-Vento funds, you better be showing that you've got those funds that everyone gets going into the pot to make sure that we're creating the most effective program.
That's right.
Shall I go on with a little more of the story?
I was going to say we could listen to your words of wisdom all day. I want to make sure we're getting to questions from our audience, and one keeps bubbling up, and all of you have hit on it a little bit. We get this a lot at Schoolhouse, almost to the exact word. My finance director is my biggest obstacle. She refuses to allow me to use Title I funds for what is allowable. So we have not only liaisons and state coordinators, but also federal programs directors. So I'm going to offer this as a toss-up. Whoever can jump in and start, we would love to hear from what has worked with that internal case making. What would you suggest to a liaison in that position?
Some of the things that we've found effective is when our liaisons talk to each other and being able to have the stories of how it worked for them and being able to bring those stories to their directors has been helpful. We did, when we had our American Rescue Plan funds and that flexibility, and so many more school divisions who weren't used to that flexibility, we used our assistant superintendent to send out assistant superintendent a memo to try and encourage folks to use it this way, that this was allowable. And so the gentle pressure on that side is another way we've reached out.
I would say don't be afraid to reach out and use the leverage of your state coordinator. Dr. Pop will often get, hi, it's me again, 45th time today, sorry. But you know, if you don't have that relationship established, do so, because a lot of times I will say, hey, I've got this idea, and you know, you hear, oh, we've never done it that way before, I'm so sorry. But we can do it that way. And here is proof from the state director that we can do it that way. So I will take Dr. Pop's words right with me and say, but it is allowable. See right here, no questions. So don't be afraid to go in there with a little leverage from the state too.
And that's a place at the state level where McKinney-Vento and Title I need working together. And over time, we've built that relationships to the point where we did a joint reminder of the, increased awareness about the inequity and the variations in Title I funds that we got from the U.S. Department of Ed. So we got that word out to everyone, but it was a joint statement, which really does help. Our Title I folks come to our homeless conference. I've presented to our Title I folks at their conference. So we do try and make sure we have that joint message going back and forth.
I know one thing that was really helpful with us is we received some guidance on where things can go in the budget. And that was so helpful for us because it allowed me as the federal programs director within the Title I application to see precisely which function code, which object code, and then I work with our business office to see, okay, how are we coding this in the right way? Am I putting it in the right place in the grant? And if there's questions, we talk about allowability. I know there's a lot of questions about the gas cards. We in Sunnyside have not been allowed to use Title I to buy gas cards, but with the ESSER rescue plan money, we were. That was a game changer. But so I'm in the same boat of we've never been allowed to buy gas cards because it's a gift of public funds. But this other grant fund would allow for it. So I am totally in the conversation with that too. But I think that relationship, not only with Title I, with your homeless program, but also with your business office. And again, getting the guidance from the state on this is where in the grant it goes. This is what's allowable. This is what's not allowable. Because again, your business office is coming from an audit perspective. They don't want to be in the papers for the wrong reasons. And so that's why by vetting, this is where it goes. This is what's allowable. This is checking with other liaisons. These are the things they've put in place to make sure that if we do give a gift card or if we do buy this, we have these checkpoints or checklists. But I think by doing all of that, that helps at least from the finance director's perspective of, okay, it's okay to move forward. We're not just going rogue because we've got homeless funds. That's been helpful as that guide. So.
That is super helpful. Lots of questions, and I'm trying to sort and prioritize in my mind as I'm scrolling through the Q&A in the chat. There's a specific question that several folks have brought up, and Andrea, I want to stay with you for this one to start and then invite others to jump in. But you in particular, Andrea, because you are not currently the liaison. And the question is, as a liaison, how do I know if I have Title I funds and what my homeless set aside is? So what would you suggest? Maybe someone is new in their position as liaison, maybe the district hasn't made use of their Part A funds in the past. Where to begin for a liaison?
So I would definitely, we actually had this come up. We had a younger or a smaller school district come and visit ours to see our program. And it was the exact same question. Well, I don't know if we have Title I money. So which is foreign to us because McKinney-Vento is part of the department I oversee, and I was the liaison. This was foreign, but I recognize that that's not how every district is. And in some districts, some directors wear multiple hats. So what I would recommend is just first ask and find out who is in charge of our Title I grant, and ask for if you could do a meeting. And at that point, just ask if they could explain what is the Title I set aside that we have. And then at that point, you start collecting your data, and you can start small. You do surveys, you keep tabs of how many requests you're getting for what, and then ask if I can provide data, could I use this data to now justify that we need X amount of money for these things. And then of course you also want to make sure the things that you're asking for within title are allowable. But I think it all starts with that relationship of just the introduction, finding out who, and then working together to finding out the how can we justify and get some money set aside.
That's great. Others have anything else to share, to weigh in on that question? Okay. I know you've all, I want to turn now, we get a lot of questions and continue to get some questions in the Q&A about how do you do a needs assessment? How do you decide what to use your set aside on? So we've gotten past the point where we know, number one, yes, I have set aside funds. Number two, here's how much they are. How then do you determine? And I know you've all shared snapshots of your process, but I would love for you to share anything else you can. Again, thinking about a liaison who might be new in their position. Maybe we have some Title I directors on the call. How do you go about, what's your formula for determining how to use your Part A set aside funds? I'll offer it as a toss-up. Anyone?
Henrico's done needs assessments. So we reach out to our families and just kind of at the close of the year, right? Tell us what worked for you, what didn't work for you, what did you wish you had, what were barriers that weren't addressed, how do these supports work for you, what kind of difference did they make? We ask a lot of those open-ended kind of questions like that and collect. And of course, like any survey like that, you know, your response rate is not going to be really grand and glorious. So one of the other pieces that we started doing, we started tracking all of our conversations with our families. What are the questions that are coming in? What are, when we're sitting down having the attendance conversations, like what do you need to get to school? What makes you want to come to school? What helps you participate in school? What do you need to succeed? We start tracking all of that. And then we go back and look through, okay, because so many people said this, and so many people said this, and we have this, and we recognize this trend in the needs in this request. So it's collect the data, have all the conversations, ask all the questions. And then the only thing I'll say with that is just be prepared. When you start asking questions, you may not get the answers that you want to hear, but you'll get the answers that you need to hear. So don't utilize that to evaluate your own self-worth. If you use it to evaluate the effectiveness of your program, and be bold and take those answers and help you make moves. But you got to ask the questions to find out the needs.
For sure. And I know the term, sorry, I'm just going to jump in before I forget. The term needs assessment can sound a little intimidating, and it's really just a fancy way of saying, how are things going? Like you said, that could be conversations. It could be referrals coming in. Ada's very good at, she makes QR codes for surveys because we know mostly everybody has a mobile device at some point. It's any and all ways that we can just get that input and that data. Another thing we look at here on my end is we have purchase orders that are open. I check, how are we spending on those purchase orders? We set aside 5,000 for caps and gowns. I think we spent maybe 500. So we don't need so much there. So where can we move that money? We had to do another open PO, you know, for snacks, for the toiletries, because those were going through really quick. So we pivoted, moved some of the money to that direction. So that's where that relationship, again, with your Title I or federal programs director, whomever oversees your money, they're running those reports to see how that money is being spent. You are also getting needs or requests for maybe different things that you're not spending it. That's where you come together to see how do we pivot and shift to what's some of the, you know, to meet the current needs. And every year is different. So yeah, but don't get tangled up with needs assessment. It's more what's going on in the community. What are your families and students telling you? Think of it that way.
And you can look at it in terms of basic data. So when we do monitoring, we're looking at how are you doing on your state assessments? What does the pass rate look like for the total LEA versus McKinney-Vento versus students who are disadvantaged? And so we make a cover sheet for our liaisons, which have the state levels of those, and then as much of the LEA data as we have. If it's too small a number, they need to fill it in themselves. But if you're looking at your achievement data, your chronic absenteeism data with those different populations, and your on-time graduation rate, those are three really concrete pieces of data to be looking at. And if your pass rate on your assessments is 30 points lower than your overall rate, it's hard to say everybody gets what they need. So going back to that, it's just real concrete information that can be shared.
Such wise words from all of you. I'm going to make sure we get to a few more questions. First, I want to acknowledge we've gotten a few questions that have popped up in the Q&A box in the chat about potential implications of federal actions, particularly the federal budget. I'm going to drop some links here in the chat to a couple of Schoolhouse Connections' most recent resources, including our live tracker of major federal actions and our summary of various bills and what they would mean for EHCY, Education for Homeless Children and Youth. Encourage you to take a look. I know a lot of you have questions. We are continuing to monitor the situation, and I believe we have another alert that either has gone out or is going out momentarily if you are signed up to our newsletter. So be on the lookout for that. I want to dig back into some specific examples. We always get questions around, can I use Title I set aside for this? What about that? What about this? I know you have all mentioned transportation, and that's such a huge one. I want to ask one clarifying question to Lisa Ann first that has come in a couple times. You mentioned a couple ways that you use your funds for transportation. Can you review those again and explain those a little bit more?
So our Title I funds are only used to support contract transportation. Then our division, of course, does in-kind services by providing pupil transportation. Right now, they're currently transporting 370 of our students this school year. And then we use other funding to purchase gas cards, where we figure out mileage and kind of reimburse. We support families in reimbursing their mileage to get their students to and from their school of origin.
Thank you for that. That is a clarifying question that has come up, and want to acknowledge, I think Sunnyside mentioned they do not use gas cards. It's different in every district. And so encourage you to check with your financial officer, your administrator. But want to note that that is allowable and a good way that some districts have been making use of their EY and other Title I funds. I want to turn towards food. And I want to ask, again, I'll offer this as a toss-up. Food is an allowable use of the Title I Part A set-aside funds. How have you all, or have you, and how have you been able to use funds to provide food for students experiencing homelessness?
We have not used our Title I funds in that way at all. We have used our sub-grant funds to purchase food when we're doing engagement or enrollment events, special events like that, or a special academic enrichment event where we couldn't get the whole of the food donated. For our students to kind of sustain them beyond the breakfast and lunch they receive at school and to support them, we have built community partnerships. So we have a wonderful partnership, of course, with Backpacks of Love, and they provide us food on a monthly basis. And we also have partnerships where we've applied for corporate level grants that we do through, we have some really very cool businesses that are headquartered in Richmond. So we apply for their grants, and I would encourage you to look around at corporations there, because they have the volunteer monies set aside. They want to donate their monies, and then they want to donate volunteers to help carry out whatever their monies are paid for. So that's how we're providing that supplemental food assistance to our families.
Just want to add that as we're talking about needs assessment, also one of the needs that came up was from staff, from our transportation staff, who are transporting our McKinney kids, saying, hey, we need bottled water. Some of these commutes are a little long. It's getting kind of hot because Arizona's hot. And so we use some of our money for that, also for snacks. We do have a partnership with our community food bank. And so we do provide in other ways in that way as well. But for our McKinney kids, we did provide snacks and water and stuff like that. Keep our kids hydrated in this heat.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Araceli. That is a great example. I am mindful of time. We have 5 more minutes. I want to say a special thank you to our SHC staff who have been and are continuing to type answers into the Q&A box to your questions. We will continue to try to get to as many of those as we can in the next few minutes. We also will pull the questions from our chat log after the webinar and work on answering the most commonly asked questions and publish those to our website in a couple of weeks. Just give us a little bit of time to get to all of them. I want to offer a last word to our panelists. We've gotten so many questions here today. You've shared so many wonderful, rich examples of how you've been able to successfully utilize your Title I Part A set-aside funds. I want to make sure we can go around and give each of you an opportunity to say, one last thing, what's one place you would start? What's one thing you would do first if you are a liaison or someone in the district or someone at the state level looking to make better use of those Title I set aside?
So I'll start. Find out who your person is in charge of your Title I. To me, that's the foundation of everything. Build a relationship with them. Set a standing meeting. And that way, during that standing meeting, you are providing your data, you're providing what trends are you seeing, and you are making sure that the funds are there to help meet those needs. So could make that connection. To me, that's the most crucial part of this entire session.
Absolutely. I would echo that. Find the people who share your same vision, your shared passion, and come together with them. Because you can really do some great things together. And if you're don't be shy, right? We're serving a population that is unseen and unheard. So you have to be the loudest voice in the room for them. And I promise when you start making some noise, you will find others to join in and make noise with you.
I just echo the same. Find out who that person is to make those tough decisions with, and make partners with your community. There's a lot of partners out there that are really invested in what you're doing, and what they're invested in how these kids are doing and how they can help.
Find those who have similar thoughts and put your voices together, because it does make a difference.
Thank you all so much for sharing your expert insights today. I want to share a few additional resources before we close out the webinar. We do have on Schoolhouse Connections website a Title I Part A Law Guidance and Use of Funds resource for you. We also linked here to the FAQs from our inbox specifically related to Title I. And as you heard mentioned today multiple times, data. One place to start are Schoolhouse Connections Child and Youth Homelessness Data Profiles, where you can look up how many students are experiencing homelessness in your particular local education agency. If you are a liaison or someone who works directly with young people experiencing homelessness, we want you to know that we have a scholarship at Schoolhouse Connection, and you can see the application closes June 2nd. It is quickly approaching. I know it's the end of school year rush, but this is such a fantastic opportunity. If you are working with young people who are looking to go to a post-secondary institution, please encourage them to take a look and apply if they wish. More places to connect with us and find us. We are everywhere. We're on all the social media sites. Again, Slack community is available to you. That's where you can connect with your peers from across the country. Check out our YouTube channel. This webinar, along with all of our others, is posted there for you to take a look at. If you're not on our e-newsletter list, we encourage you to sign up. You can find the sign up link at our website. And this is where you'll get all of our updates, information, legislative information, best practice examples and highlights, webinars, etc. And a resource that we're really excited about and that we want to make sure you're aware of is if you are new as a McKinney-Vento liaison, we created a toolkit just for you. This is a resource hub that has everything you need to know to get started, hopefully. So we encourage you to check that out, whether you're a new liaison or the most seasoned. Sometimes we all need a tune-up and a reminder of what's out there and about those duties and where we can begin. This is our Schoolhouse Connection team. Most of our K-12 team contact information is here on the screen today. I want to say a special thank you to Andrea, Araceli, Lisa Ann, and Dr. Pop. Everything you have shared today is invaluable to our audience. Lots of kudos coming in the chat and through emoji reactions, and we just can't thank you enough, not just for your time to share with us today, but for everything you are doing in your LEAs and your states on behalf of students experiencing homelessness. I want to thank our participants once again for joining. And with that, I wish you all a wonderful afternoon. We hope to see you on a webinar again soon. Thank you so much, everyone.